You know, there are some stories that just feel like they're part of our collective DNA. And the Exodus? That's one of them. It's this massive saga of slavery, a jaw-dropping liberation, and a divine power that has just echoed down through the centuries, shaping faith for literally billions of people. And it all kicks off with this one simple command. But let's be real, it's not a polite request, is it? It's a world-changing demand. It's a challenge thrown down to the most powerful empire on earth by a runaway shepherd who says he's speaking for God himself. And the journey that follows is, well, it's just wrapped in mystery and miracle. The path forward is marked by this unmistakable, supernatural GPS, a constant divine presence guiding this brand new nation through a huge, unforgiving wilderness. And of course, it all builds to this moment, an absolutely impossible rescue, a miracle so huge, so reality-bending, that the telling and retelling of it would become the very heartbeat of a people's identity for thousands of years. So, the story of the Exodus. Chances are you know the big moments, right? The burning bush, the 10 plagues, the parting of the Red Sea. But underneath that epic, almost cinematic surface, there's a story that is way more complex and, honestly, way more fascinating. It's a battleground for historians, it's a blueprint for some of the most profound theological ideas ever, and it's an absolute masterpiece of literary design. So in this explainer, we're going to peel back all those layers to understand not just what the story says, but how it says it and why it still has such incredible power today. All right, so let's dive into the narrative we all think we know so well. Because for an entire people, this isn't just a story, it is the story. It's the foundational event that explains who they are, where they came from, and what their purpose in the world is all about. The plot points themselves are just legendary. So picture this. It's been 400 years. The Israelites' population has exploded, and a new pharaoh who's totally paranoid about their numbers crushes them into slavery. Into this world, Moses is born. He's saved from being killed as a baby and, in a crazy twist of irony, is raised right inside Pharaoh's court. He ends up an outcast, a shepherd in the desert, and it's there that God calls to him from a bush that's on fire but somehow isn't burning up, giving him this impossible job: go back and free your people. What comes next is basically a divine showdown. 10 devastating plagues are unleashed on Egypt because its king is just so stubborn. The awful climax is the Passover, which finally breaks Pharaoh's will. But that doesn't last long, which leads to that final desperate chase to the edge of the Red Sea, where history and the sea itself are about to be split wide open. But for all its power, one question has fascinated, frustrated, and totally divided scholars for centuries. How much of this incredible story actually happened? Yeah, this is the big one, isn't it? It's the central puzzle, and the search for an answer has launched thousands of archaeological digs and filled up whole libraries. And the truth is, the answer you get really depends on who you ask. It's not a simple yes or no. Now, what's so interesting is the tension here. On one hand, you have these tantalizing clues that point to a real historical setting. We have Egyptian records that mention Semitic peoples in Egypt, sometimes as laborers. We've got names like Moses, which sounds pretty Egyptian. The story is just soaked in details of Egyptian culture. But then you've got the other side of the argument, and it's a big one. The biggest problem? The silence of the sands. There is literally zero direct archaeological evidence for millions of people wandering the Sinai desert for 40 years. No campsites, no pottery, nothing on that scale. And on top of that, a lot of modern archaeology suggests that the early Israelite culture actually grew up from within the land of Canaan, not from a huge group of people coming in from the outside. So where does that leave us? Well, the consensus among most mainstream scholars today is this: very few people see the book of Exodus as a literal, word-for-word history. The numbers are too big, the miracles are too massive, and the archaeology is just too quiet. Instead, they see it as something you might call mythologized history. The idea is that a real, smaller event, maybe a small group escaping Egyptian control, became the kernel, the seed of a story that was told and retold and expanded over hundreds of years, crafted into this grand national epic to explain who they were and their relationship with God. Okay, so if it's not meant to be read like a straightforward history textbook, then what is it for? This is where we get to the powerful theological ideas that form the absolute heart and soul of the book of Exodus. To really get Exodus, you have to understand the kind of writing it is. It's what scholars call salvation history. This isn't history written just to record facts. This is history written with a mission.
Its goal is to look back at events and reveal God's hand at work, specifically his saving actions. It's a story that says this is who we are, and we are this way because of what God did for us. And this salvation history builds on three massive ideas, like giant theological pillars. First, there's theophany, a direct, terrifying, awe-inspiring appearance of God on Mount Sinai, with all the smoke and lightning. Second, there's election, this radical idea that God has specifically chosen this small, beat-up group of former slaves for a special purpose. And third, the most important of all, covenant. Now, this isn't just a promise. Think of it like a contract. Back in the ancient world, big, powerful kings made treaties with the smaller kingdoms they controlled. The Exodus story takes that idea and does something totally revolutionary. It shows God himself entering into a binding, legal agreement, not just with the king, but with an entire nation of people. This covenant at Sinai lays out the laws and the rules that will define their whole relationship from that point on. Okay, this is where it gets really cool. These huge theological ideas aren't just spelled out for us. They are woven into the very fabric of the story with incredible skill. And you can see this best in the most famous part of the whole book. Let's take a closer look at the 10 plagues. 10 plagues. We all know the number. But they are not just a random escalating list of terrible disasters. Oh no, they are brilliantly structured. For a long time now, scholars have pointed out this really elegant literary pattern. You've got 3 sets of 3 plagues, and each set has things in common. And it all builds up and up and up to that devastating 10th and final plague, the death of the firstborn. It's a really satisfying way to structure a story. But what if that's not the only pattern? What if there's another one, a deeper one, layered right on top of it, hiding in plain sight? A structure that might reveal an even deeper purpose to this whole cosmic drama. Some scholars have suggested a completely different way to slice this, not 3-3-3-1, but 7 and 3. And check this out. The first 7 plagues seem to be aimed at one audience, Pharaoh and the Egyptians. The goal is to show God's power to a world that doesn't believe. And this set of 7 climaxes with the plague of hail, the very first time Pharaoh actually admits the Lord is in the right. But then, with plague number 8, everything shifts. The final 3 plagues are designed to teach a different audience, the Israelites themselves. And the text basically tells us this is the point. Just before that 7th plague, God's message to Pharaoh is that he's been kept alive for this one reason, so God's power can be shown off, so his fame can resound throughout the world. This is an outward-facing demonstration. But then, bam, right before the 8th plague, look at the dramatic shift. The message isn't to Pharaoh anymore, it's to Moses. And the purpose has totally changed. It's so that you may recount this story to your kids and your grandkids. The focus turns completely inward. This story is now being framed as a core memory, a piece of Israel's identity to be passed down forever. So, here's the clincher, the detail that ties it all together. The famous hardening of Pharaoh's heart. For most of those first 7 plagues, the text says that Pharaoh hardens his own heart. He's making his own stubborn choices. But for the final 3 plagues, the ones for Israel's benefit, the language changes. Now it says God hardens Pharaoh's heart. This shows God's total and complete control to his own people. It's an incredibly sophisticated and powerful literary design at work. And all of this brings us to that incredible climax at the Red Sea. And it helps us understand why this ancient story about this one group of people still resonates so deeply with all of us when we're facing impossible odds. Let's just stop for a second and put ourselves in their shoes. Right before the miracle, they weren't thinking about literary structures. They were just trapped. I mean, can you imagine an impassable sea in front of them, and behind them, the dust cloud from the chariots of the world's most powerful army coming to drag them back to slavery or just kill them right there? They were absolutely, completely terrified. And this was their response. Not triumphant faith, not quiet trust. No, it was bitter, sarcastic, soul-crushing despair. They just lash out at Moses. To them, the situation was hopeless. Logically, rationally, there was no way out. They were caught between the sea and the sword. But Moses' reply just completely flips the script. It's a radical call to do nothing. In the middle of a crisis, he says, "Be still." He's telling them to stop trying to figure it out because this isn't their fight to win. It's this profound statement that true rescue, true liberation often comes from a place completely outside of our own limited options. It arrives from a direction they never saw coming.
Ultimately, the story of the Exodus is preserved and retold not just as history or literature, but as this timeless model of hope. It's a story that speaks to anyone who has ever felt trapped, cornered, with no good options left. It's this powerful reminder that the moment of absolute maximum pressure, the point of total hopelessness, might just be the very moment before an unimagined path opens up right in front of you. The Israelites faced their Red Sea. What's yours?